James Washington pushed his cleaning cart across the shiny floor of Coleman Industries. His blue uniform was old but clean. His hands were rough from years of hard work. He had been a janitor at this company for 23 years. Most people walked past James like he was invisible. They never said hello. They never asked his name. To them, he was just a man who emptied their trash cans. But James had a secret. A wonderful, powerful secret that nobody knew about. Every evening after work, James went home to his small garage. There, covered by an old blanket, sat his most precious treasure, a 1965 Cadillac DeVille. The car was sky blue with chrome that sparkled like diamonds. His father had given it to him before he died. "Son," his father told him, "this car is more than metal and wheels. It's our family's heart. 3 generations of Washington men have worked on engines. Never forget where you come from." James never forgot. On this particular Tuesday afternoon, James was emptying trash cans on the 5th floor when he heard loud, mean laughter coming from the parking lot below. He looked out the window. A crowd of employees had gathered around 2 cars. One was a bright red Ferrari that cost $2 million. It belonged to Richard Coleman, the CEO of the company. The other car was James's old Cadillac. James's heart began to beat faster. He had parked his Cadillac in the employee section that morning. Just like always, what was happening? He rushed to the elevator and went down to the parking lot. His stomach felt tight and nervous. When he got outside, he saw Richard Coleman standing next to the Cadillac, laughing and pointing at it. Richard was a tall man with expensive clothes and perfect white teeth. He wore a watch that cost more than James earned in 5 years. "Whose piece of junk is this?" Richard shouted to the crowd. "It looks like something from a museum, a broken museum." Everyone laughed. Some people took out their phones and started recording videos. James walked slowly through the crowd. His face was calm, but his heart was pounding like a drum. "That's my car, sir," James said quietly. Richard turned around. His eyes went wide with fake surprise. "Oh, it's the janitor. James, right? Or is it John? I can never remember." "James Washington, sir." "Well, James Washington," Richard said, walking in a circle around the Cadillac. "This thing is embarrassing. It makes my parking lot look poor. How can you drive this wreck when you work at my successful company?" James took a deep breath. His grandfather's words echoed in his mind. A man's worth isn't in his wallet. It's in his character. "This car belonged to my father," James said, "and his father before him. It runs perfectly fine." Richard threw his head back and laughed even louder. The crowd laughed with him. But a few people looked uncomfortable. They stopped laughing. One of those people was Jennifer Walsh from Human Resources. She stood at the edge of the crowd with worried eyes. Another was Michael Torres, a young intern who had always been kind to James. Michael held up his phone, recording everything. "Perfectly fine." Richard mocked. "My Ferrari could drive circles around this ancient boat. Look at it." He kicked the Cadillac's tire gently. "This thing probably can't even go over 60 miles per hour. Something stirred inside James. It was anger, yes, but also something stronger. Pride, the pride of 3 generations of Washington men who knew engines better than anyone. "Your Ferrari is beautiful, sir," James said calmly. "Very expensive, very fast. Finally, you understand quality." Richard grinned. "But expensive doesn't always mean better," James continued. The crowd went quiet. You could hear the wind blowing through the trees. Richard's smile disappeared. "What did you just say to me?" James stood up straighter. "I said expensive doesn't always mean better. My Cadillac has more soul in one tire than your Ferrari has in its whole body." Richard's face turned red. "Soul? Soul? You think your rusty trash has soul. I think it has something your car will never have," James said. "Love, care, knowledge built over years." Richard stepped closer to James. They were almost nose to nose. The crowd held their breath. "You want to prove that?" Richard hissed. "Let's make a bet. A real bet." "What kind of bet?" James asked. Richard's eyes gleamed with mean excitement. "A race. You and me. Your ancient Cadillac against my Ferrari. This Saturday, on the old highway outside town. The crowd gasped. Michael's phone camera zoomed in closer. And what are we racing for? James asked. Richard smiled like a shark. If I win, which I will, you quit your job. You leave Coleman Industries forever. And you give me that ugly car, so I can crush it into a cube. Jennifer Walsh stepped forward. Mr. Coleman, this isn't appropriate. Quiet, Jennifer, Richard snapped. Then he turned back to James. But if you win and you won't, I'll give you my Ferrari. My $2 million Ferrari. What do you say, janitor? Do you have the courage? James looked at his Cadillac. He thought about his father's hands teaching him how to rebuild an engine when he was just 8 years old. He thought about the secret modifications hidden under that hood, the special work he and his father had done over 20 years. He thought about every person who had walked past him like he was invisible. I accept your bet, James said clearly. The crowd exploded with noise. People shouted and cheered and gasped. Michael's video was already uploading to social media. Richard laughed victoriously. Saturday morning, 8 o'clock. Don't be late, janitor. I'm going to enjoy watching you lose everything. James simply nodded. He got into his Cadillac and drove away slowly, steadily. As he left, he didn't see Jennifer Walsh shaking her head with worry. He didn't see David Chun, the senior engineer, watching with curious, intelligent eyes. But he did see Michael Torres in his rearview mirror, giving him a small thumbs up. The bet was made. The race was set. And James Washington had 4 days to prepare for the most important drive of his life. That night, James drove straight to his garage. His hands were shaking, but not from fear, from excitement. He parked the Cadillac inside and closed the garage door. Then he stood there for a long moment, just looking at the car. The blue paint gleamed under the single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Okay, old friend, James whispered. It's time to show them what you can really do. He walked to his workbench and opened a wooden box. Inside were notebooks filled with his father's handwriting. Diagrams, calculations, secrets. James smiled. Nobody at Coleman Industries knew the truth. Nobody knew that James Washington wasn't just a janitor. He was a master mechanic, a genius with engines, just like his father, just like his grandfather. For the past 15 years, James and his father have been rebuilding this Cadillac, not to make it look pretty, to make it powerful. Incredibly, amazingly powerful. They had installed a custom racing engine, special cooling systems, lightweight materials hidden under the classic body, computer chips that could manage power better than anything from 1965. From the outside, it looked like a normal old car, but under the hood, it was a monster. James rolled up his sleeves and got to work. He checked every wire, every bolt, every gear. He changed the oil with special racing formula. He tested the turbo system that was hidden so cleverly that nobody would ever notice it. At midnight, his phone rang. It was David Chun, the senior engineer from Coleman Industries. James. David's voice was quiet. I heard about the bet. Are you okay? James and David had been friends for years. David was one of the few people at the company who treated James with respect. They often ate lunch together and talked about cars. I'm fine, David, James said. Better than fine. Listen, I need to tell you something, David said. His voice sounded worried. I've been thinking about Richard's Ferrari, the 2023 LaFerrari Spider. I looked up the model number. And there was a recall last year. Engine problems. Overheating issues when pushed extreme speeds. Not all of them were fixed properly. Some owners complain on forums that their cars still overheat. James's eyes went wide. Are you saying Richard's Ferrari might have a defect? I'm saying it's possible, David said carefully. I pulled up the service records from our company garage. Richard's Ferrari has been in for cooling system repairs 3 times in 6 months. 3 times, James. That's not normal. James's mind raced. This was important information. Very important. Thank you, David. James said, thank you for telling me. James, David said softly, please be careful. Richard Coleman is a dangerous man when he's angry if you embarrass him. I know, James said, but sometimes a man has to stand up, even if it's scary. After he hung up, James sat down on an old stool. He thought about what David had told him. Richard's Ferrari was beautiful and expensive, yes, but it had problems, serious problems. Meanwhile, James's Cadillac had been maintained with love and care for 60 years. Every part had been checked and double-checked. Nothing was left to chance. The next 3 days passed quickly. James worked on his car every night after his janitorial shift. He tested the engine over and over. He drove on empty roads, pushing the Cadillac to make sure everything was perfect. During the day at work, things got strange. People whispered when James walked by. Some laughed. Some looked at him with pity. Michael Torres, the intern, posted his video online and it went viral. Millions of people watched it. The comments were split. Some said, "That janitor is crazy. He's going to lose everything." Others said, "I hope the old man wins. That CEO is so mean." Richard Coleman walked around the office like a king. He bragged constantly about how he was going to crush James. He even set up a big screen in the lobby showing pictures of his Ferrari. Jennifer Walsh from HR tried to stop the race. She sent emails to the board of directors. But Richard was too powerful. Nobody wanted to challenge him. On Friday night, the night before the race, James barely slept. He lay in bed thinking about his father. He remembered being 10 years old, standing in the same garage. His father was teaching him how to rebuild a carburetor. "Son," his father had said, his hands black with grease, "the world will try to tell you that you're not important, that because you clean floors or fix things with your hands, you're somehow less than other people. But that's a lie." "How do you know it's a lie, Papa?" young James had asked. His father had smiled and tapped James's chest. "Because real power doesn't come from money or fancy titles. It comes from here, from knowing who you are, from doing your work with excellence, even when nobody's watching. A man who knows his craft, who works with integrity, who treats others with dignity. That man is richer than any millionaire." James had never forgotten those words. Now, lying in the darkness, he whispered, "I won't let you down, Papa. I promise." Saturday morning came with bright sunshine. James woke up at 5 o'clock. He showered, dressed in clean jeans and a simple white shirt, and drove to the meeting place. The old highway outside town had been closed for years. It was perfect for a race. Straight, long, and empty. But when James arrived at 7:30, he saw that the highway wasn't empty at all. Hundreds of people had shown up, maybe even 1,000. News trucks, cameras, police officers making sure everyone stayed safe, reporters shouting questions. Michael Torres ran up to James's car. "Mr. Washington, this is incredible. Your story went viral. Everyone wants to see what happens." James felt nervous, but he stayed calm. He parked his Cadillac at the starting line. 5 minutes later, Richard Coleman arrived in his Ferrari. The engine roared like an angry lion. The crowd cheered and took pictures. Richard got out wearing a racing suit that probably cost $5,000. He had sunglasses and a huge, confident smile. He walked over to James and leaned close. "Last chance to back out, janitor," he whispered. "You can quit now and keep your job. Just give me the car." James looked Richard straight in the eyes. "I'm not going anywhere, Mr. Coleman. Let's race." Richard's smile turned into an angry frown. "Fine, when you lose, I'm going to enjoy watching you walk away with nothing." A professional race official stepped forward with megaphone. "Gentlemen, this is a simple race. First one to reach the 5-mile marker and back wins. Any questions?" Both men shook their heads. James got into his Cadillac. He put his hands on the steering wheel. The wheel felt warm and familiar, like holding his father's hand. He closed his eyes for just 1 second. "This is for you, Papa," he whispered. The official raised a flag. The crowd went completely silent. James turned the key. The Cadillac's engine roared to life. But it wasn't the gentle purr of an old car. It was the deep, powerful growl of something much, much stronger. Richard heard it, and his eyes went wide with confusion. The flag dropped. The race began. The Ferrari exploded forward like a red rocket. Richard's face was tight with concentration as he shifted gears. The expensive engine screamed, but James stayed calm. He pressed the accelerator gently, feeling the Cadillac respond. The secret modifications hummed to life beneath the hood. For the first 30 seconds, the Ferrari pulled ahead. Richard was winning. The crowd gasped and pointed. Richard looked in his rearview mirror and laughed. The janitor was already losing. But then something changed. James pressed a hidden button under his dashboard. It activated the turbo system that he and his father had spent years perfecting. The Cadillac's engine roared like thunder. Suddenly, the old blue car wasn't so old anymore. It surged forward with incredible power. Faster, faster, faster. The crowd started screaming. Look, the Cadillac is catching up. Michael Torres filmed everything, his hands shaking with excitement. James pulled up beside the Ferrari. For a moment, the two cars were neck and neck. Richard turned his head and saw James right next to him. His face went pale with shock. Impossible! Richard shouted. Even though nobody could hear him, he pushed his Ferrari harder, demanding more speed. The engine temperature gauge started climbing. Yellow, orange, getting dangerously hot. But Richard didn't care. He couldn't lose. Not to Janitor. Not to that old car. His pride wouldn't allow it. The 5-mile marker appeared ahead. Both cars reached it at almost the same time. They had to turn around and race back. Richard whipped his Ferrari around in a sharp, aggressive turn. His tires squealed. Smoke poured from the wheel wells. James turned smoothly, carefully, like his father had taught him. Never force a car to do what it doesn't want to do. His father had always said, work with it, not against it. Now they were racing back toward the starting line, back toward the crowd, back toward the finish. The Ferrari was still fast, but something was wrong. Richard could feel it. The engine was making a strange noise, a clicking, grinding sound. The temperature gauge was in a red zone now. Danger, danger, danger. Come on. Richard screamed at his car. Don't fail me now. But expensive things break just like cheap things. Sometimes they break worse because people trust them too much. With 1 mile left to go, black smoke started pouring from Ferrari's engine. The smell of burning oil filled the air. Richard's eyes went wide with horror. No, no. The Ferrari began to slow down. The engine was overheating, just like David Chun had warned. Just like the recall reports had said. Richard had ignored all the warning signs because he was too proud to admit his precious car had problems. James's Cadillac roared past the dying Ferrari like a blue bullet. The crowd went absolutely crazy. People jumped up and down. They screamed and cheered and couldn't believe what they were seeing. The Cadillac is winning, the announcer shouted. The 1965 Cadillac is actually winning. Richard pulled over to the side of the road. Smoke poured from his hood. His $2 million Ferrari had given up. The engine was destroyed. He sat there in shock, unable to move, unable to speak. His hands gripped the steering wheel, so hard his knuckles turned white. James crossed the finish line alone. The crowd rushed toward him, cheering and crying and laughing all at once. Michael Torres got there first. Mr. Washington, you did it. You did it. James got out his Cadillac slowly. His legs felt like jelly. His heart was pounding. But on his face was the biggest smile anyone had ever seen. Jennifer Walsh from HR pushed through the crowd. She had tears running down her face. James, that was incredible. Absolutely incredible. David Chun arrived and hugged James tight. I knew you could do it. I knew it. But the celebration was interrupted by the sound of footsteps. Richard Coleman walked toward them. His expensive racing suit was covered in oil and dirt. His face was red. His eyes were full of anger and shame. The crowd went quiet. Richard stopped in front of James. For a long moment, the two men just stared at each other. You cheated, Richard said quietly. You must have cheated. There's no way that old car could beat my Ferrari. James shook his head. I didn't cheat, Mr. Coleman. I just knew my car. I took care of it. I respected it, and it took care of me. But my Ferrari cost $2 million, and my Cadillac was built with love, James said gently. Sometimes love is worth more than money. Richard's face crumbled. For the first time, he looked small, weak, lost. The bet! Someone in the crowd shouted. He has to honor the bet. Richard closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were full of tears. I don't have a Ferrari anymore, he whispered. The engine is destroyed. It's worthless now. James thought for a moment. Then he said something that shocked everyone. I don't want your broken Ferrari, Mr. Coleman. I never did. I just wanted you to see me, to see that I'm a person, that I matter, that everyone matters, no matter what job they do. Richard looked at James with surprise. You don't want anything from me? I want you to be better, James said. I want you to treat people with kindness. That's all. But the story didn't end there. News of the race spread everywhere. The video went viral all around the world. 50 million people watched it. 100 million. More. The board of directors at Coleman Industries saw the video too. They saw how Richard had treated James, how cruel he had been, how he had bet company resources on his own pride. 3 days later, they called an emergency meeting. Richard Coleman was fired as CEO. And who did they choose to replace him? Not Richard's vice president, not some fancy business school graduate. They chose James Washington. But I'm just a janitor, James said when they offered him the job. No, said the chairwoman of the board. You're a man of integrity, intelligence, and skill. You're exactly what this company needs. James became the chief operating officer of Coleman Industries. His first act was to give every janitor, every security guard, every cafeteria worker a raise. His second act was to start a mentorship program where senior employees taught younger ones, just like his father had taught him. The company culture changed completely. People started treating each other with respect. Profits actually went up because happy workers do better work. As for Cadillac, James kept it, of course. But now it sat in a special glass case in the lobby of Coleman Industries with a plaque that read, Excellence comes from dedication, not decoration. Never judge a book by its cover. Richard Coleman? He learned his lesson. He apologized publicly to James and started volunteering at a youth center, teaching kids about humility and kindness. It took time, but eventually he became a better person. And James? Every evening, he still went home to his garage. He still worked on engines with his own hands. Because that's who he was. Not the fancy title. Not the big office. Just James Washington, son of a mechanic, carrying on his father's legacy. 1 year later, Forbes magazine wrote an article about him titled, The Janitor Who Became a CEO, a story of dignity, skill, and the power of never giving up. James framed that article and hung it right next to a photo of his father. We did it, Papa, he whispered to the picture. We showed them that character beats currency every single time. And somewhere, somehow, James could feel his father smiling down on him with pride. The lesson was clear. Never underestimate someone because of their job, their car, or their appearance. Real power comes from knowledge, integrity, and treating others with dignity. Money could buy a Ferrari, but it can't buy character. And in the end, character is what truly wins a race. Did this story inspire you? Did it make you think differently about the people around you? If James's journey touched your heart, hit that like button. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that they matter no matter what job they do. And subscribe for more incredible stories of underdogs who prove that dignity and character will always triumph over pride and wealth. Drop a comment below. Have you ever been underestimated? How did you prove them wrong? Let's celebrate the real heroes among us.